Welcome to the Turtleshell Therapy Institute, a podcast made to help you learn how to feel more comfortable inside and outside of your shell. Welcome back to the Institute. I'm your host, James Nee Hundley. Today, we're going to be talking about attachment. What is attachment theory? What are the different attachment styles? What does that even mean? And how can you figure out what yours are? I mentioned in my first episode, I wrote a self-guided journal called the Attachment Theory Journal. It's actually a companion to the Attachment Theory Workbook, which was written by Annie Chen, a licensed marriage and family therapist. So even though it's a companion, either book can work just as well independently from each other, but they do work really well together. So the book that I wrote, the Attachment Theory Journal, it's filled with prompts and exercises that help you build self-understanding, better understand attachment and the different styles, helps you relate better to other people, and learn how to know when to use your attachment protections that you've developed and when not to. It's just like emotions. They're trying to be helpful. And it's on us to slow down and really assess the situation. Is this a helpful time to use that protection? Or would it be better to try something else? So what is attachment theory? Attachment theory was developed in the 1960s by John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth. These two mental health researchers developed the three primary attachment styles that we know of: secure, avoidant, and anxious. Later, Mary Main and Judith Solomon identified the disorganized attachment style, which is a style that develops from complex trauma in childhood typically. Usually with this style, the person experienced their parent or the caregiver, the person that was supposed to be safe for them, as their primary source of trauma as well. So it can create this disorganization inside, which will make a little more sense as I start describing attachment and the different styles. Like I mentioned, there are three primary attachment styles identified. There's the secure attachment style, which is the secure one. And then there are the two insecure styles, avoidant and anxious. Now, when I say insecure attachment, I know that brings on this idea of unhealthy or bad. That's not necessarily what we're saying here. What we're saying, therapists will use terms like maladaptive. I try to use terms maybe like trying to be helpful but not helpful, because the reason we have these protections, these different ways of responding or reacting to things, it's because we needed them as we were growing up. We developed them. Now, maybe they weren't always the most helpful, and at the same time, they usually were effective in either getting our needs met or keeping us safe. Which, if we really whittle down what is attachment for, it's to help us learn how to do those two things. You'll often hear therapists say attachment is how the blueprint or how we know how to exist within a relationship. Keeping that in mind, the blueprint teaching us how we exist within a relationship, that's what I'm meaning when I say this is how we either get our needs met or how we stay physically or emotionally safe in a relationship, depending on our lived experiences. A lot of times attachment is equated just to parent-child, which is definitely where it starts. And that's where a lot of the research starts. And that really is our first experience with attachment. And a lot of the foundation starts there. From there, though, it expands into other caregivers, other family, extended family that we meet, teachers. We develop attachments to different authority figures. That gives us a different blueprint. How do we exist within this context, this kind of relationship? So attachment goes into all different kinds of relationship, not just parent-child and not just romantic. When we're infants, we start off with attaching to whoever our caregivers are. We don't have language yet. Our brain, we don't really know what's going on. We just know that we have these different needs. And so we cry for them or make bids. If we have a need to want to play or connect in that way, as infants, you'll notice that they'll look at you. Eventually they start to smile, but they try to interact with you. That's a social need. Like we were talking about in our last episode with Liliana Balon, playfulness is a primary form of connection that helps create so much safety. And as social creatures, emotional safety is just as important as physical safety for us. Our brain doesn't really know the difference between an emotional harm and a physical harm. It just knows that they both hurt, and we don't want them to happen to us. So, what are the different styles? Now, secure, again, it makes it sound like that's the ideal. In a sense, we could maybe argue that. And what secure really means, it doesn't mean that you're never anxious. It doesn't mean that you never avoid anyone. What it means is you can assess a situation and connect with a person in a way that doesn't invalidate or dismiss yourself, your own experience, and in a way where you do not walk away feeling shame or like there's something wrong with you. It also means that you will take accountability for your part in any conflict or any misunderstanding. And then you can also separate that and see the other person's side in it too. That's really what security means. How does that develop? Primarily with the adults around us and the friendships and those other relationships, having experiences that help build up our internal sense of self, build up that internal confidence, that self-confidence that people are always looking for. And there's a difference between confidence and arrogance. A lot of times we're nervous about self-confidence because we're scared that we're going to become arrogant. Arrogance isn't really confidence. Arrogance is like a false confidence. It's trying to boast yourself up, even though you don't really necessarily know what you're talking about, or you have made yourself believe that you do, that you have authority over something when you really don't. And a lot of times that comes across very aggressive or passive aggressive. Self-confidence is just a felt sense of knowing, okay, I know what I know, and I have an idea of what I don't know. I'm open to not knowing things. If there's new information, I can be open to that. And I'm confident in what I know right now, but I'm not going to shame anybody or make anybody feel bad or be aggressive about it. There's a calm within confidence. Because you know at the end of the day, you did the best you could. If you didn't know something, you're not a bad person. And you can be open to learning something new or having a different perspective on something, whatever it might be. That's a lot of what we're talking about in security. Having a secure relationship with yourself, and then also being able to have a secure relationship with others. So for example, in a friendship, if you get into a fight with your friend, a secure relationship would look like, okay, I said some things that maybe I shouldn't have said. See, there isn't perfection within secure attachment. It doesn't necessarily mean you never lose your temper or maybe say things you regret, or, the other opposite side of it. There are some things that I wish I would have said. I really didn't advocate for myself, or I really should have given my friend this feedback, but I was anxious about how they were going to feel about it and if they would get upset with me. That still happens when you have a secure attachment. The difference is that you're able to reflect on it, maybe even notice it in the moment too, that this feeling is here. And okay, I should not say those things because I'm upset and I just want to make them feel hurt. I may believe some of what I want to say, and it doesn't really need to be said. Or in hindsight, I really shouldn't have said those things. I can apologize. I can take accountability for that part. What's important there is we're not bringing the shame in. The shame which would say, oh, I'm a bad person, I'm a bad friend, I'm impulsive, I'm out of control, I can't trust myself. That's the shame that comes in. And as we disinvite the shame and bring in more understanding and slowing down and more mindfulness, you'll notice that those things will happen less and less. Now, the other side of it, I didn't say what I feel like I should have said or could have said. I want to actually try and stray away from the word should, because I feel like there's a lot of shame and judgment that comes into should. So catching myself there. Could. Things I could have said. Absolutely, there are things you could have said, and kind of assessing, being curious about why didn't I say those things? What was going on for me? What was happening? And can I say those things now? And how can I go about saying those things? In the moment when you're noticing it, a secure person would notice that anxiety. This is what I'm anxious about. And then they might decide things are happening too fast. Like I'll reassess the situation and revisit it and try to address it later without totally avoiding it. And then they actually do. Or they might be able to take a moment and think through it and address it in that moment. What you'll notice, though, is that I had started with they acknowledged that the anxiety was there, or the drive to dismiss or avoid was there. So that's what a secure attachment is. Now, the most common attachment style that people talk about is the anxious attachment style. The anxious attachment style, that's pretty much a good way to sum it up. You've learned that within a relationship, there needs to be a lot of anxiety. You're feeling anxious a lot in a relationship. Is this stable? Is this secure? Is this person going to keep me safe? Are they going to be consistent? Will I have to do things to ensure that, like prove my value, or by being on top of everything, or checking in on them constantly, or maybe even like, oh, I got to stay away from them, but I'm not sure if they really care about me, or if they're going to do something, and that can build a lot of anxiety. It can also mean testing. I'm going to test them, whether you realize it or not. Oh, they didn't text me back very quickly. They must not care about me. That's a test that anxious attachment might develop. Whether you realize it or not, you may not realize that. Because again, these are things that you developed through childhood. And attachment colors how we interpret things, how we view things. What is the meaning of this thing that happened or was said? What is the meaning of this thought or this feeling that I'm having? It's all about teaching us how we interpret the meaning. And then that guides how we exist within the relationship and how we either keep ourselves safe or get our needs met. This would say that people with anxious attachment tend to have a high view of others and a low view of themselves. And that's a lot of what drives the anxiety in the relationship. Where secure it sees both are equal. My needs and my safety are just as important as other people's. Whereas a person with anxious attachment might feel, well, their needs are actually more important than mine. And that's the only way I can keep this relationship or stay in this relationship. Because as social animals, we feel safest when we're in community, when we're connected, even if it's just one person. Just having one person helps us feel very safe. And two, there is something to be said about our mammalian brain, at least the human version of it, where we do feel a drive to have like a person, not necessarily romantic, but I work with people who are also asexual or aromantic, and they're not necessarily looking for necessarily maybe like a sex or a relationship, but they do want to have a person or maybe a few people who they know they can count on or rely on. That's our social drive. We're the most fragile animal on this whole planet, arguably, at least mammal. And we need community, not just for our safety, but also for our mental health. That connection, being able to talk to people. We live in a scary world too, knowing that we have somebody that cares about us, that we can rely on if we need them. That drive is there. And the idea of losing that can create a lot of anxiety and create all of those things that I listed before that can come up in an anxious attachment. And so this low view of self feels like, well, I'm not that worthy unless I can prove my worth or somehow make people stay with me. Your attachment style, avoidant. This style is, again, like it sounds, it's about avoiding conflict with various strategies. So sometimes it is just sort of like a withdrawal or like a shutting down, or just avoiding, procrastinating, just avoiding conflict, avoiding anything that might cause stress. And with the attachment ships, the person with the avoidant attachment style will often just avoid conflict. Either won't talk about it, won't bring things up, And usually what happens with that, what they learned was they need to dismiss or detach from emotions. A lot of times people with an avoidant attachment style have a really harsh judgment of emotions. Not to say that people with an anxious attachment style don't have harsh judgments of emotions, but typically people with avoidant attachment styles will judge people for emotions, will even judge themselves for having emotions, see emotions as bad, negative, they just cause problems, just cause conflict, try to be more logical, very concrete in their thinking in a lot of ways. And that was a survival technique that they grew up to have. Avoid conflict, dismiss emotions. All they do is cause problems. Just try and stay logical about it. A lot of times, people with avoidant attachment don't know how to connect with their emotions at all. And that's where therapy can really help, helping get reconnected to emotions, helping to understand the helpful component of emotions and how to tolerate them. Because that dismissal is also very helpful in ways because it helps them tolerate it, especially if they had experiences where a lot of times their emotions were dismissed, or they had emotions that caregivers didn't really know how to manage, so they got so big to the point where it did cause conflict, or maybe even abuse, or things that created a lot of unsafety. And so you'll grow up to learn to just detach from those. It's not conscious, it just happens. It's a lived experience that gets into our nervous system. That's what attachment does. Again, it teaches us how to exist within the relationship. How do we get our needs met? And for the avoidant piece, you get your needs met by really not having needs. So that's another piece that you'll see with a lot of people with avoidant tendencies or an avoidant attachment style. I don't really need anybody else. I'm very self-reliant. And there's like a pride around that self-reliance, which makes sense because if you're trying to survive, we will idolize this thing that actually feels very lonely and disconnecting and kind of empty. Those are some basic descriptors of the different attachment styles. So as you're listening to those, keep in mind, you may not identify with just one style. Now, a lot of people do. A lot of people will hear the descriptions of one particular style and identify with that style. And at the same time, attachment is fluid. It's not stagnant. Just like a lot of things that we have in this life. Things are fluid and things are on a spectrum. So with attachment, that's how you can really look at it. What did I learn growing up depending on the kind of relationship? How do I exist in the specific kinds of relationships that are out there? The relationship with myself, the relationship with my family, my parents, siblings, specific extended family like grandparents, uncles, cousins, aunts. How do I exist in friendships? And friendships too, there are different levels of friendships. So you'll notice your attachment style might change depending on the level of closeness of the friendship. How do I exist within work relationships or relationships with authority figures like my supervisors or my teachers? How do I exist within society? And that's where social identity really comes into it too. Your race, your disability or ability, your faith, your sexual orientation, your sex, your gender. How does all of that impact how you exist within society and relate with your community? How do you relate with your culture? Attachment comes in so many levels. And with that, I'll leave you to be curious and just think about all of the things that we talked about today. Do any of the attachment styles resonate with you? Are they different depending on the kind of relationship that you're in? Does it change depending on the type of person even, or maybe how they respond to you or who they remind you of? So for now, just be curious about that. Take note. And tune into future episodes where we're going to be diving deeper into the different attachment styles and different ways to become aware and to change how you respond to certain situations or certain people. I hope to see you next week in our episode where we talk more about understanding and having compassion for your child and your teen self. and how that can help you have more compassion for your present self. Take care and have a great week.